Welcome to this week's episode of DDC On-Demand podcast, where we dive into the world of climate finance. I'm your host Trish of Davao DeFi Community. Before we begin our discussion, a quick reminder to all our audience. While we strive to provide valuable insights, nothing discussed here should be considered financial advice. Always remember to do your own research before making any financial decisions. Shout out to NFT Davao for making this podcast possible. Now let's jump into today's exciting episode. Today, we have a special guest who's at the forefront of climate finance. He's not only the co-founder of Token 2049, but also a super AI contributor at KlimaDAO and Carbon Mark. He brings a wealth of knowledge and experience in the world of climate finance. We're thrilled to have him on the show to share more about KlimaDAO and how it's shaping the future of climate finance. Guys, with me is Peter Nozek. GM Peter, how's it going?
Hey Trish, going super good.
Hi.
Great.
Peter, we're eager to learn more about your journey in the crypto space. Could you share with our audience how it all began for you and what inspired you to dive into the space? And can you also mention about the first token you bought?
Ooh, good one. Yeah, sure. So in terms of my background, I actually may be relevant to a lot of your audience. I used to live in the Philippines. I lived in Manila, and I actually went to high school there and spent a lot of time in Asia. So for me, when I finished my university education in the UK, I knew I was going to come back to Asia. And that's exactly what I did. I came back to the Philippines in 2013. And yeah, I mean, like for me, it was very clear that this is the part of the world that's growing, that's going to shape the next going to shape my lifetime. And there are a lot of challenges and a lot of things that we need to work on. And the thing that's always stood out to me really was that as amazing as Asia is, amazing as beautiful as it is, and as much as I love being here, the air quality is really bad, especially in the big cities, but not just the big cities. Usually, in certain times of the year when we're doing slash and burn, crop burning, it gets bad everywhere. Same with the palm oil plantations. So yeah, for me, like that was something that was really pressing. Right from the time that I went to high school here, it was the pollution. It was like smelling the particulates in the air whenever I went to school in the morning. And that's always something that's felt really close for me. Something that I feel like, I need to work on and I need to help contribute to fixing. So I guess that's like a good sort of piece of background context. When I came back to the Philippines, I joined a fintech company builder, and what we did is we'd invest and build fintech business models, and really scale up those companies and build them and bring them to market. And that was where I basically got my education, like looking at how to build businesses, how to scale them, how to grow them. And I got the opportunity to take part and help build a lot of successful businesses. And it was in 2017 that that's when many of us will remember we had that big run up in crypto prices, especially Ether. And then that was ICO season. So a lot of new projects came up and had ICOs. And so that's when really like mainstream attention started first going towards crypto. And so with some of the really smart people that I was working with on building these fintech business models, we started Token 2049, which is at this point, or at least in 2023, was the biggest crypto event in the world. So really bringing together the crypto community, bringing together the top projects, and providing them with a platform to meet with the people that they want to meet with, to meet with the global media, and to show their thought leadership on stage. So that's when I started getting much more deeply involved in the crypto space, primarily through the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm pretty sure either Bitcoin or ETH was the first crypto that I bought. Yeah, so that was essentially my beginning, and I've been working on Token 2049 since. And it was in 2021 that I came across KlimaDAO. It was a freshly launched project using really interesting protocol mechanics to create liquidity for carbon, which for me was like a perfect match. I've always been interested in using incentive systems to solve these major problems that we have, and especially around climate, and especially around air quality, and just our environment in general. So when I saw what KlimaDAO was doing, I immediately started getting down that rabbit hole and contributing on the Discord, and eventually, I've since been contributing to the project.
Especially since more and more contributors of greenhouse gases and other harmful carbons that are hurting our planet, it's really important that we make advances like this to help our planet, especially since more generation will also live here in our planet for sustainability. Peter, in the context of climate finance, why is it important that this field embraces decentralization? What advantages and positive impacts can it bring to addressing climate-related issues and supporting sustainable practices?
The way that I would look at it is looking at the problem of climate change. The fundamental issue is that globally, every year we release more and more carbon dioxide and other gases into the air. We have international goals to slow down the rate of emission and eventually eliminate it, because otherwise we're going to create this greenhouse effect where these gases go into our atmosphere, they prevent sunlight or the heat from escaping, and they just warm the planet. The warmer the planet becomes, the more destabilized climate systems become. Weather patterns are interrupted, deserts become flooded, and areas that are near the water also become flooded. It just completely destabilizes the way that our whole planet works. So, this is a global problem, and we have international goals to keep gas emissions below certain levels, and that will in turn prevent temperatures from rising certain levels. But the problem is we cannot achieve them. Like, year after year we fail to meet targets, and year after year we get into a situation where we continue to release more gases, and we haven't been able to get ourselves on track. So the reality is we're off track right now, and it's becoming increasingly urgent. So what we look at is what we're seeing is a problem of coordination failure. We have a global problem that affects every single person on the planet, but it's so difficult to get people to work together. So that is what I mean by coordination failure. And that's where things like crypto economics and things like Web3 and things like KlimaDAO can come in, because what we're trying to do is solve that problem of coordination failure.
Okay, that's nice. So what you mean is the decentralization of climate finance would help the coordination of people to give more importance and action towards climate change's problems. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily a decentralization in and of itself, but I guess one of the things we can look at, and this is something from the 1990s, um, was when smart people came together and they said, we can see that we're not on track to managing carbon emissions. So one of the best ways to solve this is by creating a market called the carbon market, the voluntary carbon market, in order to distribute resources around the world so that we can better address climate change. So this is climate finance. So what essentially happens is you have some companies and countries around the world that are already making great technological progress towards maybe using low carbon energy, maybe having more EVs, maybe having just in general, even being able to capture carbon from the air. And so you have these countries that are, and they're not growing that fast. Their populations are not growing, and they're stable in terms of how much resources they demand. These economies could actually work together with growing economies. So where we are, I'm in Thailand, you guys are in the Philippines. These economies are growing fast. They have younger populations, and they need to catch up to that level of, let's say, the UK or the Nordic countries in Europe. So how do you get there? Well, you get there by using way more resources, by growing and growing and growing. But the problem is that to do that, you're going to be emitting a lot more carbon. So the idea behind something like the voluntary carbon market is that you can actually incentivize these people in these countries that are still growing to grow in a more sustainable and in a cleaner way. So, for example, let's say that you are a company, a technology company in Denmark, and you want to show your shareholders that you really care about the future. You care about the future of our planet. You care about being responsible actor within the the global context. What you can do is you can fund projects, say in the Philippines, that are maybe planting trees, that are restoring ancient forests, that are planting mangroves and managing mangroves, because all of these kinds of projects are really important to the natural ecosystem, and they also help regulate the carbon that is emitted and captured from the air. So that process of funding projects that are, and also things like, for example, helping, let's say in Bangkok, we don't have a lot of EVs yet. So it's possible to help the transition of Bangkok's population to using more and more EVs by incentivizing them, by helping fund that process through this carbon market. So the way that would work is, if you, for example, are a developer, a project developer who is introducing EVs and EV charging stations to Bangkok, you would budget X amount of money to do that project, and you would also top up that budget with carbon credits. And carbon credits are awarded to you because you're doing something that helps to effectively address the climate crisis. You're introducing cleaner technologies, you're introducing low carbon technologies. And so when you're doing that, you're awarded with these carbon credits. That helps you actually execute your project. Without those carbon credits, you wouldn't be able to afford to execute that project. Now you can. So now you're basically being helped. And the same goes for, reforestation projects, for farmers, people disposing of their farmland waste in a more sustainable way, managing the methane emissions of their rice fields. Every project like this could be awarded carbon credits, And that company in Denmark would be able to purchase those carbon credits, remove them from the market, and thus show that they have helped finance the transition towards a green economy down here in the Philippines and down here in Thailand. And so that process is, or that sort of exchange is called the voluntary carbon market. And that's one of the tools that we use to address climate change. And fundamentally, it's a fantastic concept. It's a fantastic theory, but in practice, and jump in if we need to take a pause anywhere. But in practice, this market has received a lot of criticism because it's very difficult to create a new market, right? And I think everybody who's working in DeFi, everybody who's working in the crypto space knows how difficult it is to create a market, to make that market work, to make it transparent, and to make it trustworthy. And what the voluntary carbon market is experiencing right now is serious trust issues, where people are not necessarily believing, okay, well, you're that company in Denmark and you purchased carbon credits from that project, but did that project really make a good impact to the environment? Did that project really help to deliver on what it promised to do? And so there's a lot of criticism, especially in the mainstream media right now, leveled at the voluntary carbon market. And so this is where things like decentralization and the unique properties of blockchain come in, because, and this is fundamentally what KlimaDAO is involved with. What we're doing is we're trying to bring together, as KlimaDAO, it's a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. We're trying to bring together the smartest and most proactive people in the world to tackle this problem of trust. What we're trying to do is we're trying to use technology to address that trust issue. So this is when you start to look into things like real world assets. Like carbon credits are real world assets, right? They exist in the real world. They're pretty much just PDF certificates. What we do at KlimaDAO is we work with carbon bridges, or what they are, tokenizers, to bring these real world assets on chain. Because the moment that you have a PDF certificate and it's no longer it's not on chain, right? Then it is basically transparent. It is transparent. It is traceable, and it takes on that immutability, that the blockchain bestows on it. It cannot be messed with, right? So I think that's sort of like one fundamental piece. And we're also working with new entities and new organizations, innovative organizations that are starting to work directly on the blockchain. So whereas in the past, if you were a project that did good for the planet, you would approach organizations to give you or to basically authorize you to receive carbon credits. If you start your own project in the south of the Philippines, you would apply to this entity. They would send somebody to inspect your site and say, okay, these guys really are reforesting this ancient forest, and we predict that it's going to prevent the emissions of carbon over the course of 10 years. Therefore, we're going to issue you XYZ carbon credits. That's the traditional way. You'd get a PDF. But the new way, and what KlimaDAO is very keen to foster, is to approach more tech-savvy organizations that say, we're going to use IoT, we're going to use satellite imagery, we're going to use technology to make it easier to monitor, are these projects actually effective? And when these projects have been deemed effective and they're awarded carbon credits, these carbon credits are immediately existing as tokens on a blockchain, where they are fully transparent, fully traceable, and they cannot be manipulated, they cannot be messed with. So you can see that using this kind of FG, what we're trying to do is restore that trust in the voluntary carbon market.
But I want to ask, before the integration of blockchain technology, what typically happened to traditional carbon credits and what challenges or limitations did they face in the process?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is really what the fundamental challenge is for the market right now, and why there isn't that much trust in it. It's that it's very difficult to well, firstly, it's very difficult to predict the future. So a lot of um, a lot of projects that were awarded carbon credits, when they modeled out the scenarios of how effective they will be in capturing carbon or avoiding the emissions of carbon, those models may have been over optimistic, or they were just like way off the mark. So that's, a legacy issue. That's something that's going to be addressed or is already being addressed by better predictive technologies, by deploying AI to your modeling when you're looking at site inspections, by using better devices to monitor and so on. So that's definitely one issue. And the other issue that exists in the market is, if you're having there is no single place to know, is this a good carbon credit, and how much the price should be, because most of the transactions are done in a very traditional over-the-counter or broker-based way. So you actually have carbon brokers who you would call or email and ask for price quotes, and it's very difficult to know, are they really representing a fair price, right? Because they obviously want to make a margin. They got to do their business. They got to do work. So sometimes that broker might be in some part of the world, like in America, and maybe that broker speaks to another broker in Europe because they're looking for a client in Asia. So it goes through 3 or 4 brokers, and by the time it's gone through all those brokers, each of them is charging a markup. What you're doing is you're adding on a lot of layers of fees, right? So that the end customer is not getting the right price, and the producer, the project, is not really getting the revenues that they should be getting from this. So that, I would say, is the lack of transparency in the market. And then there are a lot of other issues, like, if you need 1,000 carbon credits, one broker may only have 800 available, so you cannot make that transaction because you don't have enough. The amount of time and energy you have to put into research is it's vast. So you have all of these sort of issues of an inefficient market that exists in the pre-existing system. And we all know that things like decentralized exchanges, things like the blockchain, what they do is they create efficient markets because they automate it, right? They put it all on the blockchain, they make it all transparent and automate it. It means that you no longer need to have people in between, calling people. It's an instant transaction. Like using KlimaDAO has deployed liquidity pools on Sushi, on Polygon, where if you look at those pools, you immediately know what is the price of, let's say, carbon credits that are issued by projects in the Amazon rainforest in Brazil. You know the price instantly and immediately. It's fully transparent. So this is where sort of there's a leap forward in terms of market efficiency.
May I ask, how do they determine the price?
It's just the market, right? Like, it's all dependent on how much people are willing to buy and sell for. It's an instant, efficient, a market. It's a price discovery. So it's all using liquidity pools. In the case of carbon credits in KlimaDAO's ecosystem, you have the Klima token, which is paired with carbon credits, carbon credit pools. And then there are multiple different types of carbon credit pools with different characteristics. So your business, if you are a business and your strategy is to support the Amazon rainforest, you would look at the Klima MCO2 liquidity pool, and you would see what is the price of one MCO2 token, because MCO2 tokens are a pool of carbon credits from the Amazon rainforest. On the other hand, if you're looking at renewable energy projects, because that's what you want to support as a company, then you would look at the Klima BCT, which is the base carbon ton pool. So all of that pricing is available. And actually, one of the cool things about building all of this technology on the blockchain is that it's all open data. It's all free to use. So we built a tool at KlimaDAO called the Carbon Dashboard, which is at the domain carbon.klimadao.finance. And using carbon.klimadao.finance, you get a complete overview of the whole carbon market as it exists on chain. And this doesn't exist in the legacy world. It is not easy to know what is the price of different tons and how much is trading, what are their volumes, and so on. All of this data in the traditional world doesn't exist because there is no single market or exchange for these. So what we're trying to do is build these tools on top of the underlying blockchain that make it super easy to navigate the market.
I would like to ask if it is related to IOU, and can you explain what an IOU is within the context of carbon credits and how these IOUs are eventually retired to make the carbon credits usable? What's the general process for retiring carbon credits?
I'm not sure if IOU is the correct term, or like if it's the term that I would use. I'm not familiar. I mean, I know what IOU means, but I don't think that's what is used in the carbon market. In the carbon market, when you perform an action that is deemed as beneficial, so either it removes carbon from the atmosphere or it stops carbon from being emitted into the atmosphere, you are issued a carbon credit. And that carbon credit is not an IOU, it's actually a credit. But the problem is, what are you going to do with that credit, right? How do you get US dollars or Philippine pesos for that? And in the traditional system, it's very difficult to do that. You would have to call different brokers and ask them to get, and ask them to give you a quote. And they would say, sorry, I don't really have any buyers for this, but let me ask my friend, and let me ask my friend and my friend and my friend, going through a lot of people. And eventually that broker would come back to you and say, okay, I can give you $1 for it. But 4 friends down the line, that person's actually buying it for $8. This is a hypothetical price, but very possible. And so what's happening is you're selling it for $1, but somebody in the UK is buying it for $8. And when they buy it, what they do is they have to remove it from the market in order to claim the environmental benefit. So that action is called retiring carbon, a carbon credit. And when you retire a carbon credit, the life cycle of the carbon credit is complete. It's now no longer on the market. So if it's no longer on the market, you've done your job as a company. You can say, hey, I've paid money, I've removed this carbon credit from the market. And as a project developer, you see that there's demand for your carbon credit. So maybe your neighbor is going to say, oh, my neighbor sold it for $1. Let me also start a project too. And that's a great thing because more and more people start projects. So that's how it would work in the traditional world. But in the blockchain-based world, all of this happens, but it happens directly. It doesn't have to go through multiple layers. In fact, if you're a project developer and you're working together with one of the new more innovative carbon registries like the International Carbon Registry, what you would do is you'd work together with them, and they would provide you immediately with tokens that represent those carbon credits. And then those tokens could enter either KlimaDAO's liquidity pools, or they could be listed on carbonmark.com, which is a carbon marketplace that was launched out of KlimaDAO. So it's a place that brings together buyers and sellers, and you'd be able to put that directly on carbonmark.com. So it would mean that there's more, there's less of a divergence between what the buyer is paying and what you as a seller are selling it for. Of course, the end result is the same. The buyer would have to buy that, and then if they want to claim the environmental benefit and say, I have done good for the planet, they would need to retire that. And so KlimaDAO has also built an open source smart contract called the Retirement Aggregator, which anybody can work with, anybody can integrate into their app, and it would take that carbon credit and remove it from the market permanently. And so that, and then it would issue you as the company that's claiming the environmental benefit a digital certificate, and it would be logged on the blockchain forever to show that you have done something beneficial for the planet.
Since early on, we have been mentioning the term carbon credits. For those in our audience who might not be familiar with the term, could you provide a much more brief explanation of what carbon credits are, so that the people who are not really familiar with it could follow with the terms that we're using throughout this session? Sure.
So if you if you are a carbon project developer, what it means is that you are doing some kind of an activity that benefits our climate through either the removal of carbon from the air or preventing more carbon from going into the air. So you can think of that as being things like reforestation. You can think of it as being avoiding deforestation, mangrove plantations, a lot of nature-based stuff, but also transitioning the power grid to renewable energy through whether it's wind power or solar or hydropower. There are a huge range of possible things. Also changing the transportation grid, installing EV chargers. And there's really a range of things that for us in Southeast Asia, it's still very expensive to do, right? There's a reason we don't do these things, because it's very expensive. And so the purpose of a carbon credit is to make this cheaper for us, right? It's to make it profitable for us to do this. So it is to encourage people to do these things. It's to encourage people to change the transportation grid, to change the electricity grid, to protect our natural ecosystems. When we do these things, there are certification and registration and validation organizations that we can call out to and say, hey, I've done these good things. Can you inspect my project and reward me for doing these good things? And that reward is a carbon credit, right? It's like an additional incentive that is only valid if what I'm doing is improving our sort of general effort to manage the climate crisis. So these carbon credits are awarded to project developers, and these carbon credits are attractive to people to purchase because they help them demonstrate that they care about sustainability, that they are good stakeholders, that they want to meet ESG goals, that they make promises in terms of climate strategy and actually fulfill those promises. So what you're seeing is you've got the supply side, so people who are being awarded carbon credits, and then you have the demand side, which is usually companies that are trying to show that they're good actors. So those companies can purchase those carbon credits from the suppliers, and that transaction, once the company has purchased that carbon credit, they need to remove that carbon credit from the market permanently through this process called retirement. And the idea is that the more carbon credits are purchased and retired, the more demand there will be for new projects to pop up and to grow until eventually we're moving forwards in a really positive direction in terms of the climate.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm wondering who are some of the established minters in climate finance space that are recognized for their role in minting and managing carbon credits.
Okay, so carbon credits are carbon credits. It's not exact. So yeah, I guess the process of minting a carbon credit would, if we're talking about purely on the blockchain side of things, so digital carbon credits, which means we've got this old system, right, where you would have project developers applying to traditional registries, and some of them are, one of them is called Vera, another one is called Gold Standard. These are the market leading carbon registries that award these carbon credits. And what we're seeing is the emergence of new registries. And a lot of them have been coming to KlimaDAO and saying, how can we work together to introduce our technology to the market and to be able to award more projects with carbon credits? So one of them is called the International Carbon Registry, ICR. They're based in Iceland. The Japanese government has a scheme called J credits, and they've recently, through a project called Mori NFT, they came a DAO forum and they proposed to introduce these J credits directly onto the blockchain, onto the Polygon blockchain. So it could be that we see more and more projects coming from Japan that are helping to fight climate change and making their credits available at KlimaDAO and Carbon Mark. You have an interesting standard called CoolRest. They use satellite monitoring to make sure that forests are being reforested and that they're monitoring their development and make sure that they're not cut down and so on and so forth. So these are some of the new standards. I would actually recommend, if you're interested in this space, to go to forum.klimadao.finance, and then you can see these constant new proposals that are coming into KlimaDAO, where innovators are saying, let's work together to grow this carbon market on chain.
That's nice. How does the price discovery mechanism work for carbon credits within the KlimaDAO ecosystem, particularly in balancing the demand and supply? Could you shed some light on how the market determines the value of these credits and how this process influence environmental and financial sustainability?
Okay. So, I mean, like I mentioned in the past, it's been very difficult to know that as a buyer of carbon credits, are you really paying a fair price? And so what KlimaDAO has done is work together with these carbon bridges to bring these traditional PDF-based carbon credits onto the blockchain, to tokenize them, to pool them together into like groupings, because if you pool them together, it becomes easier for buyers to scan the market. Instead of thinking, okay, there's one project in Uganda from 2017, and there's one from Cameroon in 2016, and one from Ghana in 2015, which one do I choose? You can actually pool them together into similar groupings. And then once they're in those groupings, so those NFTs are pooled into ERC20 tokens, they can then be paired with other tokens to trade on decentralized exchanges. So that's the power of the automated market maker, right? That's how almost everything in crypto finds its price. It's pairing it, it's putting it into a liquidity pool, and pairing it with another token. And so what KlimaDAO does is KlimaDAO holds a lot of these carbon credits. In fact, KlimaDAO holds over 20 million credits, which is more than the annual, if you want to sort of compare that in terms of scale, that's more than the annual emissions of a mid-sized country. So that's a lot of carbon. And KlimaDAO takes these carbon credits and pairs them with the Klima token, and then they start trading against each other. And as that happens, there's instant price discovery through this automated market maker on the decentralized exchange. And of course, if the demand for a certain type of carbon credit goes up, then more of that will be purchased within that trading pair or that liquidity pool, and then subsequently the price will go up. And if less of it is purchased, then the price will go down. So it just finds its price like any other asset pairing on a decentralized exchange. The other place where these carbon credits find their prices on carbonmark.com. So if you go to carbonmark.com, you can see a very intuitive interface where you can look at different kinds of carbon projects from around the world and how much they're currently listed for sale for. And that is a different kind of price discovery. It's more like how much market participants on that marketplace are willing to bid for it or are willing to transact for it. So that's a little bit more like OpenSea, for example. So yeah, those are sort of like the two main areas for price discovery.
Okay. I'd love to learn more about getting involved on this subject. Could you explain how individuals can join KlimaDAO and become active participants in this mission to support climate finance and environmental sustainability? What steps or resources are available for people who want to be part of this movement?
Mm-hmm. Sure. So, I mean, what we've discussed so far, right, is that what KlimaDAO has done is brought all of these real world assets onto the blockchain and created liquidity pools and created markets. So now we have this basic infrastructure and this basic market mechanism that already exists. Now, on top of that, what KlimaDAO enables is a governance and participation layer. So, like I mentioned, KlimaDAO has already accumulated over 20 million tons of carbon. There's over 3 million USDC in the treasury, and KlimaDAO is constantly working on bringing more and more different kinds of carbon onto the blockchain and into the ecosystem. So the first question is, what do we do with this? Like, how do we best use this liquidity to help accelerate the process of growth in the voluntary carbon market? And that would come through the collective governance process. So the way governance works at KlimaDAO, it's a decentralized process where you have anybody who can come and contribute to the sort of soft discussions, whether they're on Discord, the KlimaDAO Discord, on forum.klimadao.finance, the KlimaDAO forum. Anybody can come in and start discussing and debating on what's best done. The best ideas get pulled, and consensus is increasingly established amongst the community, and the best proposals are moved forward to what are called KIPs, or Klima Improvement Proposals. And so the community will come together and vote on these KIPs. So maybe there's a KIP that, there's a particularly interesting project in Davao that should be funded in order to help, capture carbon from the oceans there. It could be anything. So is that something that KlimaDAO wants to help contribute to growing directly? So that proposal could be voted on, and then once it's voted and moved from that Klima Improvement Proposal stage on the forum, it would move to snapshot voting. And here, Klima token holders would vote, and the proposal that is ultimately voted in favor by Klima token holders would pass, and that would be on-chain voting. The vote passes, and then implementation begins. So that's sort of our governance process is the primary way. And then the second way is, we're a DAO, right? So we have contributors from all over the world who are proactively coming in and saying, I want to work on this cause and I have particular ideas of how to do this. Here's my business case. For example, some of the work that I've recently been doing together with some contributors from the Philippines actually is building a new website for KlimaDAO. And that's something that, we take the initiative to do. And if the community, approves, then we can continue doing our work. So we have to make a business case, and then the community will decide to support that. And then KlimaDAO will be able to distribute from the treasury to fund that business case. So it's like we have a governance process with how the protocol actually allocates its resources, and then we also have this distributed, decentralized work approach to work, where anybody can work from anywhere, anytime, as long as they demonstrate that they have the interest and the concrete plans and the concrete business case.
Okay, thanks, Peter. I would like to ask, are there any projects you've known coming from the Philippines? And
in terms of
looking ahead, what's in store for the future of KlimaDAO? Any insights in upcoming initiatives that KlimaDAO has in place to further its mission in climate finance and environmental sustainability?
Sure. There's new stuff coming onto the KlimaDAO forum on a daily basis, pretty much. There's not a specific project I can think of in the Philippines, but like one project recently that KlimaDAO voted to fund directly is a cook stoves project in Bangladesh for Rohingya refugees from Myanmar. A lot of these refugees are cooking with open fire, which is very dangerous. It's also creating a lot of smoke. It's creating a lot of carbon emissions. And so KlimaDAO voted to allocate USDC from the treasury to invest into these cook stoves so that that community can now start cooking without open fires, using smokeless cook stoves. That's just one example of some of the many projects that KlimaDAO is helping to get off the ground. So yeah, I mean, right now, that's certainly one area. It's, a lot of project developers are working on these more traditional approaches, or maybe some of them are working on more experimental technology. Like there's a project called LimeNet, which is using limestone powder, putting it into the water, and then that actually absorbs carbon dioxide from the water, which then absorbs from the air. So that's actually capturing carbon dioxide. There are all sorts of new projects that are coming in and proposing themselves to the community, so that the community can decide, is this something that we should help support? Is this something we should build? So yeah, like a lot going on. Definitely check out the forum and also the KlimaDAO Discord to see what are the latest projects there.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Thank you so much. Before we would end this session, any final words to our audience, or would you like to give a shout out or any platform where they could reach you if they have further questions about KlimaDAO?
Yeah, definitely. Follow KlimaDAO on Twitter or X, so that's at KlimaDAO. Join the KlimaDAO Discord. There's a link on the KlimaDAO Twitter directly into the Discord. So if you want to get deeper in the conversation, for sure do that. And as mentioned, the project that I'm sort of most excited about, at least from my contributions, is the new KlimaDAO website. Once we launch that, definitely keep it out on our socials, where we'll announce the launch there, and that'll help you guys digest the information about everything that we're doing. It's, there's a lot that we're doing. What we're trying to do with this new website is make it simple to understand and give you entry points. If you're a builder and you want to build Klima into your application, you want to build carbon offsetting into your application, we'll have a space for you to do that. If you want to buy or sell carbon credits, we'll have a space for you to do that. If you just want to learn more, we'll have a space for you to do that. So keep an eye out for that.
Okay, thank you. I would like to express my gratitude for joining us on the DDC On-Demand and sharing your insights about the climate finance, KlimaDAO, and the transformative potential of blockchain. Your expertise and passion for environmental sustainability truly inspires me. Thank you for educating me and inspiring our audience. I look forward to more opportunities to collaborate with you. In behalf of our audience and listeners, Davao DeFi community, I am honored and thankful for having me here. It was indeed DeFi that defies climate change discussion. We hope today's discussion has left you inspired and more informed about the dynamic world of climate finance. As we wrap up this episode, I'm Trish, your host from Davao DeFi community, and we'll be back with more engaging content weekly. Special thanks to NFT Davao for their invaluable support in making this podcast possible. Don't forget to stay tuned for more captivating conversations right here on DDC On Demand. Until then, bye!
Thanks.